What else is on the stove inside TLC's Holiday Kitchen as our cooking extravaganza continues next on the Learning Channel.
Today on Caprile's Cafe, chocolate holiday desserts, white chocolate hazelnut macaroons, chocolate truffles, and chocolate praline tart.
Let's get started on our white chocolate hazelnut macaroons. And to do that, we'll start with whipping the egg whites. I have 5 egg whites here, and these are warmed up just a little bit. They're not ice cold from the refrigerator. And we want to start those whipping right away because it'll take a while to start to get foamy, and then we'll add a little bit of sugar in, about a tablespoon at a time. So you want to turn this on the very highest speed you have, and don't start to add the sugar until it gets a nice foamy base. While this is starting to whip, let's take a look at the white chocolate that I've melted. Now what I did is I placed some chips of white chocolate in here, and then I placed it over a water bath, or a little bit of water in a pan, and then a metal bowl. And I turned this on, and I just got it to start heating up and to melting, and then I turned the heat off and I just let it sit, and it gets nice and creamy and smooth. You really have to be careful with white chocolate so that you don't burn it. It burns very easily. So that is the best way to melt white chocolate. Now we have a nice foamy base here in the food processor, and we can start to add our sugar. We'll add just about a tablespoon at a time right through the feed tube. Just add a little bit at a time. What you want is a nice glossy, stiff peak before you add in your hazelnuts and your white chocolate. You need the air in the egg whites to give the cookies a little bit of body. And once you start whipping in nuts and white chocolate and things that are heavy, you're going to take some of that air out. So you need to make sure this is nice and stiff and has a glossy peak. Let's take a look at this. Get my spatula here. What I do is I pull some out. Let's see if I can get some out. I pull some out, and then I pull my finger, and this is starting to hold a peak. And so I could go just maybe another minute or so, and then I could pull it out and put the hazelnuts and the white chocolate in, and a little bit of vanilla. So let's put this back on. And I'm going at high speed. Now what I have here are 2 cups of toasted ground hazelnuts, and they're finely ground. You need that fine meal to make a nice smooth cookie. You don't want huge chunks of hazelnuts in this. So I think we're just about there. Let's pull this out. And we're holding a peak real well here, so that's what you're looking for. And it should be nice and shiny. Let's move this to the side. I put this in another bowl because it's hard to gently fold in this bowl. There's something in the middle here that is for the whisk attachment. So you need to put this in a different bowl and be gentle with it. Remember, you don't want to deflate this. You can see it has a nice shiny gloss to it. Let's get all this out. We need lots of cookies. Now I add my nuts in a couple of parts just so that I don't overbeat this. So let's do about half. And we'll put our vanilla in too, just a little bit of vanilla. Now when you beat this, well, not when you beat this, when you fold this in, you don't want to beat it. You want to do large, big movements to fold in because that takes less of the air out. Let's put some more of this in. And when I get this about halfway mixed in, then I'll add the white chocolate. You're really trying not to overwork this. In goes the white chocolate. Make sure and get every bit of white chocolate. Now when you're mixing this, don't worry about streaks. Streaks are fine because you don't want to deflate it. This little bit of streak is not going to hurt the cookie at all. Just make sure you do have it fairly mixed in. Now I have a little setup that helps you when you're by yourself in the kitchen and you don't have somebody to help you. Put this in a pastry bag. What you do is you just put it, this is a measuring cup, and I just have it sitting in here, and I'll just add my batter. That way I don't need 3 hands or somebody to help. There's not always somebody to help you around the kitchen. Then I have another little setup that actually my husband John came up with, and that's a fork at the end of the pastry bag. Sometimes with a loose dough like this, it falls out. So with the fork on the end, then it doesn't fall out. It's not all over your kitchen floor. Now we'll pipe this into little rosettes. And you can make these cookies large or small. If you wanted to make little tiny ones to go with ice cream, that would be great. I like them large so they look nice in a box if you were giving them as a gift. Plus they're just good on their own. We'll finish this last one up. This goes into the oven, and what I do is I bake it at about 350 degrees until they're nice and golden brown. Try not to overbake them because they will dry out. And they'll be nice and moist and chewy in there. So I think that the kids would love to help with this, and you'll really enjoy this recipe. Here it is. For the cookies, you'll need 5 egg whites. Now make sure those aren't ice cold out of the refrigerator. 3/4 of a cup of sugar, a 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, 2 cups of finely ground hazelnuts. Now make sure and toast those before you grind them. 4 ounces of white chocolate melted. And you know, you could also use other nuts, maybe a macadamia nut or even almonds would be great with this recipe. Next, we'll be making our chocolate truffles, a very elegant ending and a wonderful gift.
This portion of the Learning Channel is brought to you in part by Nikon.
We remember our lives in pictures, but the parts in between those pictures, long stretches of life, we too easily forget. Presenting the Nikon Light Touch Zoom, the world's smallest 35mm autofocus zoom. You will take more pictures. You will remember more, and perfectly. Nikon, we take the world's greatest pictures, yours.
Me again. I was telling you about the computer that thinks it's a toy. Pico. It's from Sega. Sega! Its software is called Storyware. Turn the page. It changes right on your TV screen. See? While she's playing Winnie the Pooh, she's learning all about numbers. With Mickey's blast into the past, he's having fun with history. And while he's playing Magic Crayons, he's learning to animate his own cartoon show. Or maybe you'd rather your kid just watch TV.
The world is now a little different, a little sharper, because J.A. Henkel's, makers of the world's premier knives, has developed a way to improve them. It's called SCT, Sinter Metal Component Technology, and it's exclusively Henkel's. So only Henkel's knives will be even sharper than before and will stay sharper longer. J.A. Henkel's, the world's finest cutlery since 1731. To help start your collection, our $35 4-star 3-inch paring knife is now $19.99.
Tuesday nights on the Learning Channel. They were pirates' hideaways, castaways' prisons. Bounty hunters have plundered there. Empires coveted them. Surrounded by oceans and lost in time, these are the places where unknown riches live. Don't miss a new series that captures the spirit of a swashbuckling era and the people whose legends endure. Treasure Islands. Tuesday nights at 9:30 beginning December 27th on the Learning Channel.
To begin the truffle recipe, we'll start by breaking up some chocolate, and I have a quick little tip for you. I use an oyster knife as opposed to a paring knife or any other type of knife because you'll break the point of your knife off if you try to place it down in the chocolate and take that chocolate off in little pieces. So make sure you use something a little bit blunter, like an oyster knife or a clam knife will work also. I have some that I've already cut into pieces, and I'm going to place it in the food processor. Now, when you place this in here, the first time you turn it on, it's going to make a heck of a noise. So don't worry, you're not breaking up the machine. It's not going to explode or anything like that. So let's put this on, and we'll turn it on 1. Told ya. Told ya. And then we'll add a little bit of cream that's been brought up to a boil. Now, I add about half the cream. And then what I'm going to do is put it back on, and I cover this with a towel, a wet towel, a dry towel, it doesn't matter. It just kind of protects you in case the cream comes up out of the tube or out of the side. Once that's going, then you can add the rest of the cream. And I just drizzle it down the tube. And we'll add some orange zest also to that. And I'll show you how to zest an orange as soon as I add this in. I have an orange, and I try to get a nice, firm, fleshed orange. And this is a great tool. It's a zester. It's probably the best kind of gadget tool that you can buy. You just run it along the flesh of the orange. And what you get are these nice strands of zest without any of the pith. And then if you'd like to chop them further from there, you can do that. This is really a handy tool for your kitchen. Let's turn this off and see how smooth this is. And what you want is a nice, smooth chocolate, nice and shiny, so that it looks it should be very smooth. There shouldn't be any little pieces of chocolate. It should be very creamy. Pull that off. And then the best thing to do when you're making the truffles is to put them in a flat dish or pan will work. But the flatter it is, the better it is to scoop the truffles. Let's take our blade out. You don't want to miss very much of that chocolate. You want lots of truffles. And then into the dish. Now you could also flavor this with lemon or other flavorings. I didn't put the brandy in yet, but once I get this in here, I'm going to stir about 1/8 cup of brandy. You could also add an orange flavored liqueur or raspberry, any flavor you like. Use your imagination or use whatever you have in the house. We'll give this a stir. And then this goes in the refrigerator and you let it set up just until it's hard enough that you can deal with it. It doesn't need to be super hard because otherwise you won't be able to scoop it. Let's put this here for a moment and I'll show you some that I have that's been chilled. Now if this is really hard, you're going to be scraping away at this to try and get one truffle. If you see, this is nice and soft, but it's not so soft it's going to just meld in my hands and not look like anything. This scooper is great. It's a little ice cream scoop, and it's much better than using a spoon. It gets a nice round shape. And then we're going to roll this in some cocoa powder. It's a Mexican cocoa powder that gives it a much more exotic flavor, a little bit of cinnamon in there. Now this is a time when you get the kids in here to help. It might be a little bit messy, but they're going to have a great time. And you know, they can always lick their fingers afterwards. It's a lot of fun. It's a great way to spend an afternoon with your kids, just kind of enjoying everybody and making gifts for friends and family. And we'll put a few more in here. Now these were created actually to resemble a fungus, which is a truffle. And the truffles are hunted by pigs in France, which kind of sounds funny. But they're meant to look just like a truffle that comes out of the ground. And if you've ever seen a real truffle, this resembles it quite a bit. And then you can put them on a beautiful tray or a little box for a present. Who wouldn't like that for a gift? Here's a recipe. For the truffles, you'll need 12 ounces of bittersweet chocolate cut into pieces, the zest of 1 orange, 1½ cups heavy cream, 1/8 cup of brandy. Now remember, you could use other liqueurs there. An orange flavored liqueur would be great. 1 cup of Mexican cocoa powder. Now you could also roll these in nuts or toasted coconut would work wonderfully. Next we'll do a praline tart with a chocolate crust. Who can resist that?
Excuse me, I just want to turn your TV off and turn you on to the power of your kid's imagination. This is Pico from Sega. You know, Sega! It works with storybook software and this magic pen. Touch the storybook and images come alive right on your TV, interactively. Touch the learning pad and they can draw, color, they can even animate their own cartoons. Speaking of which, I'll turn your program back on now. See you real soon!
We remember our lives in pictures, but the parts in between those pictures, long stretches of life, we too easily forget. Presenting the Nikon Light Touch Zoom, the world's smallest 35mm autofocus zoom. You will take more pictures. You will remember more, and perfectly. Nikon, we take the world's greatest pictures, yours.
Caprile's Cafe Favorites is a must for every good cook's library. Over 130 easy and delicious recipes, including all the dishes Chef Caprile has prepared on her shows. At only $21.95 plus shipping and handling, the beautiful hardbound edition with Caprile's practical mix and match menu suggestions makes an ideal gift. For bank card orders, call 1-800-917-9100 or send check or money order to Cafe Favorites, 98 Main Street, Tiburon, California, 94920.
You know how to listen. You listen with your whole body, your hands, your eyes, your face. You are a confidant. Nothing is more comfortable than the sound of your voice. Sprint wants to reward you for that. Introducing TimeBank, the only program that credits you with 1 free minute for every 5 you spend on the phone, month after month, automatically.
Finally, a long-distance calling program for people like us. People who really know how important relationships are. That's why TimeBank is perfect for me. For every 5 minutes I spend on the phone, I get 1 free. So can you. Call now and Sprint will switch you for free. Then all you have to do is be yourself. There's no limit to the amount of free time you can earn. Call now and Sprint will start you off with an extra bonus. 60 free minutes. Finally, somebody understands the way we spend time on the phone.
Imagine that, being rewarded for something that comes naturally.
Call now, 1-800-621-7491.
Now we return to Caprile's Cafe.
Now let's get started on our chocolate praline tart. And to do that, I'll start with the filling first. Let's put a pan on burner, and I turn this on high. And I'm going to add 1 2/3 cups of unsalted butter. And I just kind of break it up as I add it to the pan. Then we're going to add several sugars. First we'll do brown sugar, which is 1.5 cups. And when I put this brown sugar in here, I break it up as I actually add it to the pan, because you know brown sugar has a habit of lumping. So make sure and kind of break that up as it goes into the pan. Then 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, and then some honey, about 2/3 cup of honey. And we'll let this go on high heat until it forms a really nice syrup. It'll get thick, and it'll also get very clear, and that's how you know it's starting to get done, is it'll get thicker and clearer, and it'll also start to reduce a little bit, so you'll lose a little bit of the liquid. Now while that's cooking, we'll work on the crust. We're sort of working backwards this way. And to make the crust, this is a great crust that can go, you can use it for fresh berries, you can put a little mascarpone on the bottom of the crust and then put all these berries or peaches, just about anything can go in this crust. And it's easy. First we'll put 1.5 cups of flour. I put all the dry ingredients in first. 3/4 cup of powdered sugar, 1/2 cup of cocoa powder, and a pinch of salt. Now you could either add your vanilla in now or later. It really doesn't make a difference. You kind of can't mess this tart up. These are such simple directions that you could even add the butter in now and it'd be okay. So a little bit of vanilla. But I've worked with food processors long enough to know that if you just throw the butter in here, it's going to get stuck under the blades. You're going to have a heck of a time trying to get a nice smooth dough. So what I do is I turn my food processor on and start dropping little chunks of butter into it. And what that will do is it'll make a nice smooth dough that rides right on top of the blades. Don't worry about the dust, it's okay. You just keep dropping the little pieces in. It doesn't have to be an exact measurement, just drop them in. And once we get this in, we'll let this go for just a moment just so that it makes the dough, and we'll take a look at what's going on over here with our filling. Now you can see it started to bubble and reduce a little bit, and we'll just give it a stir just to make sure all the sugars are getting incorporated. That's already starting to get nice and clear, but there's a little separation between the butter and the sugars. You can hear our dough's ready. It makes enough noise so you know it's ready. And what you have is the dough riding on top of the blades, and you don't have to worry about butter being stuck underneath. It really makes it much easier. Let's get this out of the way. Pull your blade out before you stick your hands in there so that you don't get cut. Make sure and take all the crust off, because you can freeze this crust and use it later. It also makes good cookies. Now, since I'm using a flan pan with a removable bottom, because it gives you this nice curves to the crust, I'm going to spray it with some vegetable spray to get all in there, all the cracks and crevices, and it'll make it so much easier to pull your tart up. Also, sometimes the sugar will boil over the side, and that helps keep that from sticking badly. You don't want your crust to stay in the pan and your tart to come out. Now, to make the crust, what I do is I just make a little roll, and I press this along the sides. Now, don't worry if it's perfectly even. So what I'm going to do is I just roll this so it just looks like this. And it doesn't have to be perfectly even, or if it's too thick in one part and too thin in the other. What you'll do is once you get all the dough in there, then you'll go around and even it up, push it up the sides, and then just swipe over the top, and it cuts the dough so it's a nice even crust. Then to make the middle, what I do is I just press it out, sort of like playing with clay. Press it out, and then I just press it in the bottom, because you've already got a nice start to it. It's important, I'll show you one that I have that's already been pressed out. It's really important to make sure that you get a nice 90-degree angle in here. You want as much of that filling as you possibly can put in this crust. So we're going to put this in a 350-degree oven, and we're just going to blanch it off a little bit, get it till it sets up. So we'll put it in this oven, and it takes, about 10 minutes or so should be fine. And I have a crust that's finished already, and I've allowed it to cool. And let's take a look over here at our filling again. Now you can see this is getting thicker, much thicker. And it also isn't separated. You can see it's all one kind of, it looks like a caramel sauce. It doesn't look like butter and sugar. And what we'll do is we'll add our pecans now. You can turn the heat down just a little bit once it starts to get really thick. And I like the big pieces of pecan. I like a whole, a half a piece of pecan is really lovely. It looks nice on top of the tart. We're putting 3 cups in here. You can also put macadamia nuts, hazelnuts, almonds, all kinds of different nuts work in this. And I also use a combination of nuts is really great. Let's add just a little bit of cream. I don't think we have enough good stuff in there, so we'll add 1/3 cup of cream. And when you add the cream, it's going to boil up a little bit. Just make sure that you kind of pull your hand back. Now usually I let this cool a little bit before I put it into the tart shell. And what you want to do is this, I've got hot caramel here, and caramel is going to give you the worst burn possible. So take your tart shell and put it on a sheet pan. It'll make it easier to carry to the oven, and you won't have to worry about being burnt. And then you pour all your filling in there. And get as much as you possibly can. And then we'll place this in a 350-degree oven, and we'll cook it just until the caramel is set. You can put a knife in there, or it'll also kind of jiggle as one piece. It won't be little pieces jiggling all over. Now I have one that's finished, so let's go down here and I'll show you the tart as it's come out of the oven. It's cooled a little bit, and we'll cut a piece out of here. This is one of my favorites. I can never resist caramel, and especially with this great chocolate crust. A little bit of whipped cream. When you serve dessert, you always want to make sure that it's nicely presented. And I'm using my zester again. So we'll zest a little bit on top, and you want to do it kind of on top of the whipped cream so that it shows up. And then I take the whole plate and I just dust the plate with a touch of cocoa. Don't worry about it if it gets on your counter. You can always wipe it off. Now, I think that any guest would be really impressed by this dessert and go home very happy. Here's the recipe. For the chocolate crust, you'll need 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of cocoa powder, 3/4 cup of confectioner's sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1 teaspoon of salt, a cup of unsalted butter. Now remember, you could either use your fingers to cut that up, or you could cut it into cubes, and you can also use that crust for other tarts, fresh berries and any type of fruit. For the filling, 1 2/3 cups of unsalted butter, 1.5 cups of either light or dark brown sugar, 1/4 cup of granulated sugar, 2/3 cup of honey, 3 cups of pecan halves, and 1/3 cup of heavy cream. Now you could also substitute macadamia nuts, hazelnuts, or almonds. They'll work just as well. Just think how great you could make somebody feel by giving them a gift from your heart, something that was made in your own kitchen. Perhaps these white chocolate macaroons with hazelnuts, kind of crispy yet gooey, or elegant truffles that have Mexican chocolate that's just sort of exotic and kind of spicy. You know, and you could have so much fun with your kids in the kitchen all day, creating all kinds of wonderful gifts. Then a beautiful ending to an elegant dinner would be this decadent pecan tart with a chocolate crust, and perhaps even the cookies or the truffles too. I think you'll have a great time creating these gifts for your family and friends. I hope you'll join me soon. Happy cooking!
For this year's Christmas feast, why not try something different? Spinach lasagna, Bologna style. Biba has the recipe next, as the Learning Channel continues with its holiday kitchen.
This portion of the Learning Channel is brought to you in part by J.A. Henkels.
The world is now a little different, a little sharper, because J.A. Henkels, makers of the world's premier knives, has developed a way to improve them. It's called SCT, Sinter Metal Component Technology, and it's exclusively Henkels. So only Henkels knives will be even sharper than before and will stay sharper longer. J.A. Henkels, the world's finest cutlery since 1731. To help start your collection, our $35 4-star 3-inch paring knife is now $19.99.
With the iced tea pot by Mr. Coffee, you can make delicious fresh brewed iced tea in about 10 minutes for pennies a glass. So if you're under the spell of expensive bottled iced teas, snap out of it. The iced tea pot by Mr. Coffee.
Cold sufferers, if your pill's so good, how come it doesn't work 24 hours? Efferdac 24 does. Other pills last 6 hours or 12, but one Efferdac relieves 24 hours. Efferdac keeps cold symptoms from coming back.
A long time ago, in a place far, far away, a baby was born in a remote little town. A baby who would change the course of human history. Now, in celebration of the season, TLC recalls that wondrous moment in time, separating the facts from the myths while looking back on the genesis of a great religion. Join us for a very special evening, our Ancient Journeys Holiday Special. Tonight, beginning at 6 on the Learning Channel. Robert Wagner hosts Legends of Hollywood, weekdays premiering Monday, December 26th at 5 on TLC. Sweet treats from Death by Chocolate, an all-American favorite on the Burgermeister. Weekdays at 2:30 and 4:30 on the Learning Channel. It's time to see what else is on the stove inside TLC's Holiday Kitchen as our cooking extravaganza continues next on the Learning Channel.
Buongiorno. Hello, I'm Biba. Welcome to my kitchen. My city of Bologna is known all over Italy for its splendid homemade pasta. It is there that the famous lasagna verdi alla bolognese is made. This is the pasta that my mother would make regularly at Christmas. And today I want to share this dish with you. Please join me. There is no doubt that green lasagna alla bolognese is a culinary masterpiece. There is also no doubt that this is a dish that is time-consuming to prepare. However, with a bit of organization, the dish can be put together fairly easily, and I'm here to show you how. This is also a dish that is a dish for special occasion because it takes some time to put this dish together. We used to have this at Christmas time. And we used to have it more often than that, but at Christmas time, this was the dish par excellence. So we would enjoy it all together with family, relatives, and my mother would make tons of green lasagna. She was working for 2 days. There are 4 steps into this dish. There is the making of the ragù alla bolognese. There is the making of the besciamella, the basic bechamel sauce, white sauce. There is the making of the pasta, the cooking of the pasta, and assembling of the dish. I can see you thinking already, I'm getting out of here. I don't want to be in the kitchen where this takes that long. But let me show you. You can make the ragù alla bolognese way ahead of time, which is what we are going to start with. What is a ragù alla bolognese? It is a sauce that is cooked with vegetable and meat, and it is cooked very slowly for a couple of hours until all the flavors and the ingredients come together and come to life. It is probably one of the classic sauces of Italy. So these are the ingredients that we are using. I have onions, celery, and carrots. We do not change those ingredients. This is a dish that we don't tamper with. And the reason is that it has been there for hundreds of years in Bologna, and it is perfect. So we just want to do it as the recipe explains. So here in my skillet I have olive oil and butter, unsalted butter. And then all the vegetables are diced, and they are tossed together until they are soft. This will take 7 to 8 minutes, okay? Then at that point, you're going to raise the heat to high. And what I'm using today is veal, simply because I like veal. There are a couple of ways of doing the ragù, actually a couple of kinds of meat. There is the veal and there is the beef. And people have different opinions. Somebody will say that the beef is the traditional meat, and other people will tell you that the veal is traditional. You never find 2 Italians who will agree on something. So I'm using the veal, because my mother used to use veal, and I just love that so much. This is ground veal, which you buy at the store, or if you want to ground it yourself, you can buy the shoulder of veal, and you grind it very, very fine, and you put it into your vegetables. At this point, as I said a second ago, you should have a high heat so that everything will cook and brown together very well. This will take another step that will take approximately 7 to 10 minutes, depending on the kind of heat you have. When the meat is no longer pink, then what you're going to do, you're going to splash it with white wine. Nice splash of white wine. And then we are going to add the tomatoes. There is another ingredient that some people consider very important to this dish, which is Italian bacon, pancetta. And we are just going to add a little bit of that for extra flavor. And we are going to cook everything together. When the wine is evaporated completely, and it is almost done, then we are going to add the tomatoes strained tomatoes, enough to cover your meat, so which means I need it all, and a little bit of milk, because the milk will cut down the acidity of the tomatoes. Now, look inside this pot, and you look at the color, how red it is, because right now the ingredient that stands out mostly is the tomato. However, when this cooks gently and slowly for about 2 hours, the color changes dramatically, and let me show you what it looks like. I'll put this away, and this is my sauce, which has already been cooked for that length of time. And you see how nice it is. Look at this. This is a nice dark color. At this point, if you want, you can add a little more milk and let it simmer for another 15 minutes or so. And this is the classic Bolognese meat sauce. For the spinach lasagna, we begin with the meat sauce. Saute the onion, the carrot, and celery in butter and oil until soft. Add meat and pancetta and cook until lightly golden. Add wine and reduce. Add tomatoes and milk and season with salt. Cover and simmer 1.5 to 2 hours. The next thing that we are going to do is the bechamel sauce. Here we are. The bechamel sauce is your basic white sauce, which is used, in Italian it's called balsamella, and in French it's called bechamel, and in this country it's called your basic white sauce. What you need to do here, you are going to melt your butter, and I use approximately the same proportion of butter as I use of flour. And then when the butter is melted, I'm going to add the flour and whisk it into the butter, and I'm going to cook it for 3 or 4 minutes over medium heat until the flour cooks. You have to be careful at that point not to have the heat too high, because you don't want your flour to turn dark. If it turns dark, then you're going to make a brown sauce, not a white sauce. And then what you have next to you, you have the milk, which is already hot, and then we are going to add the milk. Let's see. Here I have the butter that is beginning to get hot. Come on, let's go, let's go. It's taking its sweet time. I'm going to put my flour there and stir it with a whisk or with a wooden spoon. Try to take away all the lumps. You don't want lumps in this sauce, not at all. See inside here how nice? And then when this, now I need to lower the heat a little bit here, because if not it's turning dark. And you let it bubble gently with the butter for 2 or 3 minutes. And then, as I said, at that point, you're going to add the milk, and you're going to bring this to a boil, just slightly under the boil. And you keep cooking it, and the sauce will thicken up within 5 minutes or so, and your flour will be nice and cooked. And that is the basic sauce, which I'm going to show you what it looks like when it is done. You can flavor it with a little bit of nutmeg, of course with salt, and it is very, very nice and very soft, very smooth and very good. And next we are going to prepare the basic egg pasta dough for the lasagna. For the bechamel sauce, heat the butter and add the flour. Stir over low heat for 2 to 3 minutes. Add the hot milk and cook, stirring constantly 4 to 5 minutes, or until the sauce is thick and has a smooth consistency. Season with salt.
Legends of Hollywood, premiering December 26th on TLC.
Cold sufferers, if your pill's so good, how come it doesn't work 24 hours? Effidac 24 does. Other pills last 6 hours or 12, but one Effidac relieves 24 hours. Effidac keeps cold symptoms from coming back.
Me again. I was telling you about the computer that thinks it's a toy. Pico. It's from Sega. Sega! Its software is called Storyware. Turn the page, it changes right on your TV screen. See? While she's playing Winnie the Pooh, she's learning all about numbers. With Mickey's blast into the past, he's having fun with history. And while he's playing Magic Crayons, he's learning to animate his own cartoon show. Or maybe you'd rather your kid just watch TV.
Take one Christmas Eve, add a little whimsy, stir gently, then toss in a heaping scoop of diamond walnuts. That's what holiday memories are made of.
It's decision-making time in New Britain, Connecticut.
Wow, look at that socket set.
You see, New Britain's the home of Stanley.
What do you think? The electric stapler or the screwdriver set?
And while it's no easy task,
Glue gun? What glue gun?
making the best possible products all year long,
Oh yeah, moms love these things.
it's even tougher deciding
I just don't know.
which makes the best gift.
Does he have a Stanley garage door opener?
Doesn't everybody?
Look for great Stanley gift ideas at leading retailers.
Tuesday nights on the Learning Channel. They were pirates' hideaways, castaways' prisons. Bounty hunters have plundered there. Empires coveted them. Surrounded by oceans and lost in time, these are the places where unknown riches live. Don't miss a new series that captures the spirit of a swashbuckling era and the people whose legends endure. Treasure Islands. Tuesday nights at 9:30 beginning December 27th on the Learning Channel.
To make good pasta by hand, you need flour, eggs, and good elbow grease. So let's begin. You see what I have here? It is flour that has a well in the center, and that is where my eggs are. And because this is spinach pasta, I'm also including some spinach which have been cooked and chopped up. This is the traditional way of making pasta in Bologna, naturally in many parts of northern Italy. So the first thing you do, you break the eggs inside here with your spinach, and then you begin to add flour from the inner side of the well over the eggs, a little bit all over, and incorporate it. And you do this beating constantly so that the flours and the eggs become a soft paste, which in turn is going to become a dough. Okay? The best surface for making pasta is wood. If you can, and you have a large wooden board, that's what you want to use. If not, then any other surface will work. The proportions. Generally, 3/4 of a cup of flour per large egg will serve 1 to 2 people, depending on the appetite of the people. And basically, that's all you need. And just look, with this, it's always amazing to me to see that with the basic ingredients of eggs and flour, we can create one of the most beautiful food in the world. Now look at what I have. I have a big mess, right? Okay, this is what is going to happen. But at this point, I can't work with my fork anymore, so I'm taking a pasta scraper or a pastry scraper, move this away, and I'm beginning to mix my dough and pick everything up from the counter, all the little bits and pieces, okay? And then I'll begin, see, clean everything up, put everything inside here, and then I'm going to begin to do the kneading. I will start gently first, clean your hands with a little bit of the flour, and then you begin to knead your dough first gently, and then I'm going to show you the proper way of doing it. You know, if you are a bread maker, this will come very, very easy to you. Because what I'm doing now, I'm folding the dough toward me, pushing it away, and you can see it's very sticky. So I have to add a little bit more flour, but not all of it. I might not need it. So fold it over, push it away, and turn it. Fold it over, push it away, and turn it. Keep doing that. And then at the beginning, you take your time, because the dough is very, very soft. And then as you go along, and the dough begins to firm up a little bit, then you're going to do the kneading. This is a very important step. If you take your time in this step, and it takes you the proper amount of time when you do it by hand, is probably 7 to 8 minutes, you're going to be fine. Then it's going to go through the pasta machine in no time at all. Then, when this dough has a nice firm consistency, let's move everything away. And of course, I haven't finished I've finished kneading it, it has another 5 or 6 minutes, I want to show you what it looks like. This is the dough. It is a nice little bowl of dough, which you can prepare it even a little bit ahead of time and keep it wrapped in plastic wrap, and then roll it out when you are ready. Next, we are going to roll out the pasta and assemble the lasagna.
The world is now a little different, a little sharper, because J.A. Henkel's, makers of the world's premier knives, has developed a way to improve them. It's called SCT, Sinter Metal Component Technology, and it's exclusively Henkel's. So only Henkel's knives will be even sharper than before and will stay sharper longer. J.A. Henkel's, the world's finest cutlery since 1731. To help start your collection, our $35 4-star 3-inch paring knife is now $19.99.
We remember our lives in pictures. But the parts in between those pictures, long stretches of life, we too easily forget. Introducing the Nikon Nice Touch Zoom, a Nikon 35mm zoom for under $129. You will take more pictures. You will remember more, and perfectly. Nikon, we take the world's greatest pictures, yours.
You have seen me do it. I am Biba, welcome to my kitchen. Today we'll be preparing big cannelloni. Now it is your turn to cook classic Italian meals in your home. It is simple.
To order your very own copy of Biba's Trattoria Cookbook, use your credit card and call 1-800-592-0077 or write to Biba's Trattoria Cookbook, P.O. Box 68618, Indianapolis, Indiana 46268.
Arrivederci and buon appetito.
I was afraid of the computer, but with Quicken, the world's #1 finance software, it's easy.
And to find out just how easy, call this number to try Quicken for just $9.95. Stop worrying about money. Quicken shows exactly where your money goes and exactly how much you have. Get all your financial information accurately organized in one place. Let Quicken pay your bills, track bank accounts, investments, taxes, budgets, and more. And it's simple because Quicken looks and works just like your checkbook, only easier. Pay a bill once, then next time Quicken remembers and does it all. See how Quicken's graphs instantly show you what you spent in any given month or on any given item. Get reports like these at the touch of a key.
And let Quicken reconcile your whole bank statement in less than 2 minutes.
So, if you have a PC with Windows, DOS, or a Mac, call now to try Quicken for only $9.95. That's right, only $9.95 to try Quicken.
Call 1-800-624-1735.
And now we are going to roll out the pasta. And here is my little dough. So I'm going to cut a piece about the size of an egg. Okay, when you have a little bowl here, this is approximately the size of an egg. And then you're going to flatten it down. And then you look at this little pasta machine, which is a hand crank pasta machine. It is hooked up on the counter, and you can do that even on a table if you want to. And then it has 2 rollers that will finish kneading the dough for you, and it is also going to stretch the dough. So I'm going to put the rollers at the widest point, and I'll go through my dough once this way, then I flatten my dough, and I'm going to press all the air out of that, and if it is sticky, I will just very lightly put a little bit of flour and do this step 3 or 4 times. And why do I do this? I want to do it because the dough is not completely smooth. And when my dough is nice and smooth, then it is the time that we are going to stretch it out. And now it's beginning to look nice. So I'll put just a little flour. Easy with the flours, because probably you don't need it. You just want a little bit so that nothing will stick to the machine. Now I'm going to go to the next notch, and I will not fold the dough anymore. Now I am at the stretching point. So I'm going to begin to stretch my dough, and I will not add flour unless my dough is very sticky. So here you go. While I'm doing this and stretching it out, I have a sheet of dough that I just prepared before, and I'm just going to dump it into boiling water. I'm going to explain to you in a second why I'm doing that. So here we go. Then you go to the next notch, And you pull the dough lightly. You see how nice? This is a good thickness or thinness for lasagna. It's really nice. Now, lasagna is one of the few kind of pasta where we are going to pre-boil it slightly before we are going to put it together. Otherwise, you don't do that with any pasta. Lasagna, cannelloni, or any pasta that needs to be stuffed. So this is the point for this. I have my pasta here. I have boiling water. Do not put 10 sheets of pasta into a little pot because it's going to stick together. If you want, you can add a little bit of oil, okay? And then after 10 to 15 seconds, you take this out. You plunge it into cold water. So we are blanching our pasta. And then you take this out, and you see it is unraveled now. Then you put it on your kitchen counter, and you pat it dry. And you do that with all the sheets. In my lasagna, I generally make between 7 to 8 layers. And so you have to cook all the pasta this way, so that when it's going to bake, your pasta will not crunch up, and it will just be pre-cooked a little bit. So now that we have done that, let's move over here. I can turn this off. And this is what I have. I do need my glasses, though, because I can't see. Okay. I already began the lasagna, but this is what I want you to look. I have pre-cooked my pasta just as I showed you a little bit ahead of time. And in order for the pasta not to dry out, I put it into between sheets of plastic foil, plastic paper. And now I'm going to put it on my lasagna. You cut it about the size of your pan that you're using. You have to be careful here because, as you can see, once it is at this stage, it might stick together. So you need to take your time and layer it into your pan. And take this out. Okay, let's do another one here. You just peel it off. And if it breaks, you know what? You're going to patch it up. And once you bring it to the table, nobody will ever know. I promise you, they won't. Okay, what I have here is my bechamel sauce, which is the cream sauce that we made before, and I want to beat it up a little bit. And this is a binding sauce that we use in Italy. We use it in Italy mostly for binding, even though you could dress some pasta with this sauce, except I find it that it's very rich, and I don't like pasta served only with that. Okay, over here I have my meat sauce, which is cooked very gently for a long time, and I showed you before. So you let it cool off a little bit before you begin layering your lasagna. Then you get, and this is where a nice lasagna comes, at this point really, where everything comes together. It is in the amount that you put in your dish. Everything should be more or less in equal part. Nothing should be too strong or too assertive. In other words, you want nice, rich lasagna, but not overpowering. So we make a layer with the meat sauce, but if you can see, you can still see the pasta inside here. I'm not covering it completely with the sauce. It would be too heavy. So you just want to put a nice light layer. And this is the cream sauce, but as you can see, I'm not adding very much. It has to be less than the meat, not too much, because this is binding the old dish, but I don't want it to be too overpowering. And kind of spread it out this way. So now that I have my 7 layers, I'm going to put a nice handful of freshly grated Parmigiano Reggiano, which is very important between layers. And then we are going to top it with a little bit of butter, which will melt. Keep in mind, this is a dish from Emilia-Romagna. I mean, in Emilia-Romagna, they don't worry about calories. They worry about taste. But I promise you that each calorie is very, very good. And this is the way we are going to bake it. So I put it in a 350 or 375 oven for about 15 to 20 minutes until the top begins to be nice and golden and everything is binding together. And of course, here we go. We have, ooh, this is heavy. And it looks good. For the spinach pasta dough, put the flour on a pastry board and make a well in the center. Break the eggs into the well and mix with the cooked spinach. Draw some flour from the inner rim of the well over the eggs. Keep adding flour a little at a time until you have a soft dough. Knead the dough for 7 to 8 minutes, then roll it out into long, thin sheets. Boil the pasta sheet briefly. Plunge into cold water and dry it. Cover bottom of the baking dish with a layer of pasta. Top with a layer of meat sauce and one of bechamel sauce. Sprinkle with Parmigiano. Repeat for a total of 6 to 7 layers. Dot the last layer with butter and bake in a 375 oven for 15 minutes or until golden. If you could only smell it, it is absolutely wonderful. This is the kind of food I love. You know why? Because I grew up with this kind of food, so it's very important to me. This is a typical Bolognese dinner, a Christmas dinner especially. And we start with your lasagna, not in large amounts because they are very rich. And generally you serve the roast, and this is a veal roast which has been stuffed and then cooked with Marsala wine, and those are the pan juices. This is another vegetable that is typical, which is stuffed baked tomatoes. And then whatever vegetable you prefer as a salad, I have string beans. But this is very typical. This to me means Christmas. They are deep fried pastry fritters, which are sprinkled with powdered sugar, and we always had tons of this to eat when we were children. And we would go on for forever. My mother would spend days in the kitchen. And then, of course, if you go to the trouble of preparing this kind of food, you have to have some wine. I hope you enjoy this meal. I hope you get some ideas out of that, and please try it, because the food is wonderful. Arrivederci, Buon Natale, Merry Christmas to all of you.
Celebrate the season with wonderful recipes from the heart of Dixie. Natalie Dupree will show you how it's done as TLC's Holiday Kitchen continues next.
This year, give a gift that won't end up in the attic or the hall closet. The Iced Teapot by Mr. Coffee. Great iced tea, glass after glass, the whole year round, in 2 and 3-quart sizes. Mr. Coffee. What'll he think of next?
Is someone special expecting something special from you? Don't disappoint them. Send it express mail. Overnight delivery starting at just $9.95. Even on Christmas Day. Express mail from your post office.
Take one Christmas Eve, add a little whimsy, stir gently, then toss in a heaping scoop of diamond walnuts. That's what holiday memories are made of.
A long time ago, in a place far, far away, a baby was born in a remote little town. A baby who would change the course of human history. Now, in celebration of the season, TLC recalls that wondrous moment in time, separating the facts from the myths while looking back on the genesis of a great religion. Join us for a very special evening, our Ancient Journeys Holiday Special. Tonight, beginning at 6 on the Learning Channel. Robert Wagner hosts Legends of Hollywood, weekdays premiering Monday, December 26th at 5 on TLC. Sweet treats from Death by Chocolate, an all-American favorite on the Burgermeister. Weekdays at 2:30 and 4:30 on the Learning Channel. Stay tuned for more mouth-watering recipes as our holiday cooking extravaganza continues inside TLC's Holiday Kitchen, coming up next on the Learning Channel.
Hello, I'm Natalie Dupree. Next on New Southern Cooking's Holiday Special, we have some fabulous treats for you made by some very special Southerners. Lee Bailey has made a wonderful turkey stuffed with cornbread dressing. We have gravy and biscuits, Paul Prudhomme's candied yams, scalloped oysters made by Ann Siddons, perfect for Christmas Eve supper, cornbread, and then we have cooked watercress by Edna Lewis, and Craig Claiborne's black-eyed peas vinaigrette, and all next on New Southern Cooking. Our first guest, Ann Rivers Siddons, is a writer of extraordinary power and writes vividly about the South and its people. She's the author of many novels, including Heartbreak Hotel and most recently, Home Place.
Oh, well, in the South, dinner was something that you had either at 12 o'clock or you read about in a book about New York. We never had any dinners. Until I went away to college, the noon meal was dinner and the evening meal was supper. I think the difference is sort of a different in intent, or maybe in degree of formality. I think of little Sunday night suppers.
And Christmas Eve suppers.
Christmas Eve suppers when maybe they're a lighter or just one thing, or an after the theater supper, and you have just one dish.
Well, you said in one of your, in Home Place, I think it was, that the main character didn't feel comfortable when she returned home until she had dinner at her sister's home.
Sat down at her sister's table, and she'd been away to New York, and her life had just been that of an Easterner for 20 years, and she comes back to this little southern town that in essence hasn't changed, and she felt totally estranged, but this ritual of coming together across a table just seemed to ease all the kinks and smooth out all the knots, and you are home. When I think of home, and my parents are still living, and I'm deeply grateful for that, I think of us gathered around my mother's table, and my grandmother before that.
No matter what age you get to, or how many children
what age, my mother turns me into a 10-year-old when I walk into her house, and I let her do it. It's what she needs, and I suppose I need it too.
And tied into the table.
There at the table, you know.
Is when that happens.
It's when it happens. Everything, you know, food is far more than sustenance in the South, I think.
The water.
Water.
The bountiful.
The gifts of the sea around those coastal towns. I think that's where we get this business about oysters for Christmas. You were saying that you noticed that almost everybody talked about oysters around Christmas, and I don't know a family that doesn't have them some way. And I think it's because the first Georgians who came here came into Savannah and the coastal towns, and they had those wonderful Apalachicola and Dalfusky oysters, and when they came inland, they brought the taste for them, but they couldn't get them, maybe except once a year, because we had so little ice. So they saved them for the holidays, and it became a very special thing.
Well, let's go into the kitchen and see that very special oyster dish.
Let's do it.
And how do you normally do this wonderful dish? It just looks so luscious and rich.
It's very simple,
What
and
a
I don't
big
know if
oyster.
I've got, aren't they beautiful? If you can find oysters that good, you're home free. This may not be quite the order in the recipe, but it doesn't matter. I would take a third of my oysters.
Sort of a dump kind of a thing.
Yeah, just dump.
Yeah.
And layer them. Yeah, maybe one or two more. Layer them in the bottom of the pan here, so you cover the pan or the bowl more or less.
And that's been greased.
That's been greased. Then I would take, here, I'll just scatter.
Yeah. I got some spoons over here.
About a third of these crushed crackers, and they crush pretty fine. I use a food processor to do that. Spread them out so you've topped the oysters. And then I'm going to put just a grating of black pepper here. Okay. And maybe a scattering of salt. You want to be careful about that because your saltines are already salty. And your
Right.
cheese has a little salt,
Right.
but I like salt. So.
Let's see, get your cheese in
Okay,
there.
I'll get a little cheese in there. I'll scatter about a third of the cheese and dot it with butter.
Now, how are we going to do that without making a mess? We'll make a mess.
Just going to make a mess.
Okay.
That's what we're going to do, is just make a mess.
I think that's the whole part of having fun in the
What do you-
kitchen anyway. I'm not a great opponent of using
Work
your
with
hands.
oysters.
Using your hands, that's right.
Okay, then we're going to...
Little mace?
Oh, the mace, yes. You want to
Great.
sprinkle this mace is... I think of it as a Charleston spice.
Well, it is. Actually, I guess mace is the outside of a nutmeg. It's
Yeah,
a little,
yeah, and it gives a nice little pungent...
Go.
Anyway, we want to do this again. You want to do about 3 layers of this,
Right.
depending on the depth of your container. So,
can you make it ahead?
Oh yeah, you can make it ahead. I wouldn't freeze it, but you can. No,
crackers.
You can make it
Other
ahead and chill it, and I do. In fact, sometimes I think it's a little better when it
Like a day
sits
ahead?
like that. Yeah, you can make it a day ahead
And chill it.
and let it chill. It kind of melds the flavors there.
And then
Okay.
you got to do the
Yeah, let me
mace,
do a
and
little
I'll
mace. Whoa.
move the oysters in. Then I'm going to go over while you're pouring in the, finishing this off.
Okay, I'll just finishing a layer, and then Natalie will show us.
The finished dish. There we go.
It's very simple to do, and I've never met anybody yet who did it.
Let the butter off. We'll just put more butter on the top. It won't hurt. This is a real no-fail kind of a dish, isn't it, Anne?
I don't see how you can
with
mess
all the
up
pressure
with it.
of Christmas, you can just about do whatever you want to do with it and not worry.
It certainly doesn't. It's delicate as far as
Good
timing
cheese and good oysters. Now I've baked this. Now you're going to mix your cream with
I'm going
your
to pour that into the
liquor.
I'm going to add just a
From
dash
the oysters.
of whoa, and here it is.
Oh, what is that? Worcestershire
That's
and
Worcestershire and
Tabasco.
Tabasco.
The oyster liquor.
Oyster liquor, and I'm going to pour this around and over. Maybe make a little hole here so it'll go down to the bottom.
With your finger
With
or
my
with the
finger,
spoon,
right?
My kind of a cook.
And you want it to come up just to about, a half inch from the top of everything.
Okay.
And, you know, if you're doing it right, you'll probably use all of that.
And 350 for, till it's boiling, about 45 minutes.
Say about 45 minutes. Oh, that's
Look at
beautiful.
it.
Look
It's beautiful, isn't it, Anne?
Yeah, that's
Bubbly
what it should
and
look like.
gorgeous,
That's what
and
it
that's
should
the way it should look like. I'll hide this one so that they can just see this gorgeous finished one. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
What a lovely supper.
It's a nice supper.
In Lee Bailey's cornbread recipe, which he likes to make a day ahead of his stuffing, he likes to heat the oil so that it's nice and hot and sizzling when you add the batter. He puts it in a 450 oven and heats it up, and then takes fresh yellow cornmeal, and the world is evenly divided about white cornmeal or yellow cornmeal. He uses a nice soft wheat all-purpose flour, baking powder, salt, and sugar. It all gets mixed together. You can sift it together if you'd like. I use a strainer frequently, or just mix it like this if it's all been sifted already. Of course, you could substitute self-rising flour for that flour. Now let's go ahead, and then you'd have to leave out the baking powder and the salt. Here's an egg. Just mix it together. A couple tablespoons of oil and some milk. You could do all that in this bowl if you felt comfortable about getting it mixed without getting it lumpy. I probably would. It's just extra dishes. And just mix all of this together until it's nice and smooth. And then pour it hot into the skillet. And you want that to be hot enough that you hear a bubble and a sizzle when you pour the oil in. Just a little sizzle there. It should have been just a little hotter, but that's all right. However, it won't make the nice crust that it would if the oil had been really bubbling. And that'll get soaked in. And let's go ahead now, put it into the oven at 450, and then reduce the heat to 425. It bakes 20 to 25 minutes. And you can just flip it out, as I have over here, if you'd like, or cut yourself a wedge.
But whichever you do, don't let it sit in the pan because then you lose that nice crust. Get it out of the pan. First one's always a little hard to get out, but get them out of the pan as soon as possible because you won't have a nice crispy piece of cornbread otherwise. Wedge it out. And then, in this case, what we're going to do is to let it go 24 hours and then put it into our stuffing and have a wonderful turkey stuffing.
This portion of the Learning Channel is brought to you in part by J.A. Henckels.
The world is now a little different, a little sharper, because J.A. Henckels, makers of the world's premier knives, has developed a way to improve them. It's called SCT, Sinter Metal Component Technology, and it's exclusively Henckels. So only Henckels knives will be even sharper than before and will stay sharper longer. J.A. Henckels, the world's finest cutlery since 1731. To help start your collection, our $35 4-star 3-inch paring knife is now $19.99.
Me again. I was telling you about the computer that thinks it's a toy. Pico. It's from Sega. Sega! Its software is called Storyware. Turn the page. It changes right on your TV screen. See? While she's playing Winnie the Pooh, she's learning all about numbers. With Mickey's blast into the past, he's having fun with history. And while he's playing Magic Crayons, he's learning to animate his own cartoon show. Or maybe you'd rather your kid just watch TV.
We remember our lives in pictures. But the parts in between those pictures, long stretches of life, we too easily forget. Presenting the Nikon Light Touch Zoom, the world's smallest 35mm autofocus zoom. You will take more pictures. You will remember more, and perfectly. Nikon, we take the world's greatest pictures, yours.
I remember it like it was yesterday. I was hosting my first big business dinner and I paid with my Visa card. Turns out I was over my limit. I was so embarrassed I didn't know what to do. So I got the American Express card and it never happened again.
Call 1-800-THE-CARD. We can take your application right over the phone.
Applying for the card was one of the easiest things I've ever done, and smartest. And anyone who's ever gone anywhere knows it. I have a place to cash checks, get my mail, and get help when I need it.
My dad said the minute you get a job, get an American Express card. He said, trust me on this one. I've gone everywhere with it. And here's a tip. Sign up for membership miles and everything you charge on the card will earn you program miles. So you can keep on traveling.
So call now for the American Express card. You can apply right over the phone.
It's really worth it.
It helped not having a preset limit.
I got cash on the go.
I can call 24 hours a day. That helps.
Go anywhere and it's with you all the way.
Don't delay. Just dial 1-800-THE-CARD.
Our next guest, Lee Bailey, is one of the most popular hosts in America. Author of Country Weekends and his newest book, Good Parties, Lee comes to share his feelings on holiday entertaining.
My father was a wonderful cook. My mother never learned to cook at all. And so I really think of him at those times of the year. And I have a memory of, as a child, especially on Christmas morning, going down very early, of course, wanting to see what was under the tree, and then smelling what was going on in the kitchen, because he was the kind of cook who felt that a turkey had to cook for hours and hours and hours at a very low temperature. And so he would get up very early, and of course in those days, at least we had Christmas dinner right at 12:30, right at noon. So that meant that the turkey had to go in quite early and he had to do all the dressing and stuff. And so by the time I got up and came downstairs, which was pretty early even then, he was already in the kitchen and it was being done. And I remember going in outside and see him there at the stove.
Now, he made his own cornbread, you said.
He certainly did. He made the cornbread often the day before. That's a very important thing, as a matter of fact, because it should dry out a bit. He would make it and he would even crumble it up a bit and leave it out so that that way it retains some of its texture. And this recipe that we're doing has a lot of texture, which I think is a good part of it.
how do you get over the fear of preparing a holiday meal?
Well, I think what you have to do is be pretty honest with yourself about what your capabilities are. You know, I think the biggest mistake people can make when they entertain, and this is in any aspect of entertaining at any time of the year, is overreaching. People trying out of enthusiasm or sometimes insecurity, but mostly enthusiasm, trying to do more than they can comfortably do. It's not written in stone any place that everybody has to be a fabulous cook, but most people can cook fairly well. And I think the trick is to cook the things you know how to cook.
If you had one holiday food that stood out in your mind as meaning warmth and love and affection, family, and the South, what would it be?
We're going to cook it today.
Turkey.
With cornbread dressing. It's still my favorite holiday meal.
An important part of the turkey is the sauce as well as the stock. So what have you got here?
Well, we have giblets and onions that have been baked in the oven. It's very important to bake them because that develops flavor. And it's a way of doing it that a lot of people don't think about. They don't think about the brown flavor. And then after you've browned them nicely and they are sizzling away, you add water.
And then,
and you kind of get all the brown parts on the bottom that you have been so busily baking.
Oh, it just makes a beautiful color, doesn't it?
And it smells
Lovely.
so good, doesn't it?
It's wonderful up here. Shall we then,
So
yeah, right.
we pour this into the pan with the vegetables, which are already prepared there. If you can help me scrape these things out.
Yes, I didn't do a very good job of scraping to begin with.
You'll
You really
pay
want to
for
get all
that.
that goodness out of there, don't we? There
Right,
we go.
Exactly.
All right.
After you do this, you add some more water to it.
Oh, look at that color already. It's
Isn't that
beautiful.
Yeah, wonderful.
A well-flavored stock makes such a big difference. And this simmers, what, about an hour or so?
About an hour to reduce a little bit,
And then you strain it up.
and then you're ready to go.
Great. Now over here, we have, what, onions?
Onions, celery, green pepper, and green onions, which you then saute until they get kind of wilted. It takes about 15 minutes to do this, so you plan ahead about it.
Looks pretty good to me. Excuse
You
me.
don't
let me
really
get you
want
over
to
here.
brown them. You just want to wilt them a bit. Then, this is...
We'll do the joint
done.
routine here again.
Right, exactly.
Actually, I can't stand metal on metal. We'll get this all out of here.
Right.
These can be done anytime. We did these ahead.
Exactly.
And so you can kind of cook them while you're getting your stock goodies browned and so
As a matter of fact, if you were really in a bind, you could do that the day before.
And then just
Yeah,
keep
and
them in the
let them come to
refrigerator.
room temperature.
What else
toss
goes in
a little
here?
bit while you do that.
Bread, toasted.
Bread, right, exactly. Parsley,
Freshly chopped.
right. Pecans, all this good
Oh,
stuff.
yeah, it's great. Can you
Can't
mix
go
that,
wrong with that.
stock and butter?
All right.
All,
Let's put those in first. Let's put
okay,
all that
salt,
in.
freshly ground pepper.
Right, and get that all mixed in.
Spices.
And then we do the stock and then the eggs. But we want to toss
Okay.
this as we go along.
Yes, sir.
Oh, boy, is that going to be good.
Oh, yes.
It's one of my favorite kinds of dressing. Now the eggs.
And that was cornbread that was in there. That's your father's recipe,
Yes.
is that it?
It was one of his favorite things, and he was a marvelous cook. And I set about trying to figure out how he did this wonderful stuff, and I made a lot of versions. You know, it's interesting, too, to have this bread in here because this has a lot of texture. The other secret ingredient, of course, is green peppers, which we all know about, but a lot of people don't seem to. And the last thing you put in are chopped eggs. And you put them in last because you don't really want to dissolve the yellow part of the egg too much. And I think that's ready to put in the old bird.
Why don't I stuff him?
Yes, that's a good
I won't get all this stuffing in here because we just don't have time, but of course at home, when you have some leisure, you stuff him. You really shouldn't unwrap him, I guess, before you stuff him because bacteria can grow on the surface area of the turkey, so you leave it in its wrapper. And I'll truss him. Just put a needle through here, tie his legs, and actually I think I'll get this skin area. Do you want to tell us about the cheesecloth?
Yes, right. That's a very important thing. Also something that my father did. You just melt butter in a little pan, and you can let it cool off a little bit so you can handle it. Then you put the cheesecloth in and get it nice and damp. Then you put that over the top of the bird and bake it that way until about an hour before you're ready to take it out.
Okay.
And
what is it? Does it burn? Want to show us what it looks
I'll
like?
show you what it looks like. It's here in the oven. This is what you see when you open it up, and you actually just lift this off. It doesn't stick, as you can see.
Oh, it looks very tasty.
And then once you take it off, you just bake it another hour.
Okay. I've gotten myself tangled up with my string here. I'll get this tied. The whole point of trussing is just to get these little legs tied together so that it keeps it nice and moist. And you bake yours on a rack, do you?
Yes, right.
To
Always
cook
on a rack.
it to about 3.5 hours or something like that?
Yes, right. You use a kind of instant thermometer.
And
to
here are
get
these
the
little
temperature.
giblets and things that were inside of the cavity. How about bringing that turkey over?
All right. Here's the turkey that's been magically cooked.
Right. Got that all cleared away for you there. Oh,
How
he's
about
pretty.
that?
Oh, he's pretty. And well,
Irresistible.
of course, you would take the stuffing out of him in a minute and do it another way.
Exactly.
For presentation, here's the pan that the turkey was roasted in. And I degrease the pan by putting paper towel over the top.
Yes, what we do here is once this is all heated up, you pour in this turkey stock, which you saw us making.
Right.
And then, of course, the grease will rise to the top. Now, it really should be degreased, and there are a lot of methods of doing this. You have one that you use.
Right. This is where I take this paper towel and just pull it across the top.
I've never done that before. It's a good idea.
It pulls it just pulls the grease off.
Mm-hmm.
And then what do you have over there?
I have mashed flour and butter together to produce this paste, which you see finished here. Right. I don't know the name. What is it?
Beurre Meunier is the fancy name.
Yes,
Yes,
you
right.
know that. Right. Exactly.
Look at the color of
Isn't that
this
gorgeous?
sauce. Is that beautiful? That's from
Right.
that stock and from that
And then
nice
when this
bird.
gets really hot, you just add this and stir it around and let it simmer away until it thickens up.
Do you have trouble with lumpy gravy at all?
Not, this actually precludes lumps almost because the butter melts and the flour has already been incorporated. Should we put this in?
Go ahead, yes. Just show them how to do that a little, you know, how you do that.
Here.
And
that has to melt, of course. But one of the other things that's really important is this device. You know, that helps to keep lumps out. As you can see, it's beginning to dissolve there. It gets hotter.
And you bring it to a complete boil.
Complete boil. You just let it boil away there for a few minutes.
And it really should taste just wonderful. I mean, the stock should, before you get started, shouldn't it? And which is part of the indication that it will is the beautiful color of that.
Yeah.
You know, my grandmother was a bad one for that. She used to always go to someone's house for Thanksgiving and say, "Oh, I'll make the gravy." And the other person had slaved all day over all the other things that were there. And then my grandmother would get the kudos because she made the lumpless gravy. So
wonderful.
Here is a good trick for gravy. This is made ahead, and it's been covered. Thank you. Excuse me for reaching in front of you again. And I've had wax paper over the top of it. That keeps it from
making a film.
Making a film.
Yeah, right.
And keeps it from lumping up on you if you need to make it ahead and reheat it.
Right.
So there's your gravy. And then we would take this gorgeous stuffing out, surround it.
Right.
What else would you do to
I
fluff
think
it
what
up?
I do is just take the stuffing out and put it maybe around the end here and put a little garnish on it, and it's done. Less is more in this case, I think.
Oh, let the turkey speak for itself.
Exactly.
And now I would like you to meet Edna Lewis. She's the author of A Taste of Country Cooking and is revered for her knowledge of Southern cooking from the early part of the century until today.
Black women were the cooks in the home and in little restaurants. And they did have a great background, a feeling for cooking. So she did make a contribution. The Southern cooking, the I don't know if it's the soil, but the way it's grown and the way it's gathered and taken care of is what gives it that great flavor that you don't find in greens that you ship from California or some distant place. It's just a real deep flavor without much seasoning. It has its own taste and it's rich and you don't want to tamper with it.
Well, Edna, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Orange County, Virginia, in a small settlement called Freetown.
How many in your family?
Well, there were my parents and 6 children and 2 children that their mother had died and they came to live with us, so there were 8 of us.
And would you all get together for Christmas?
Yes, and whoever else dropped in or came to visit.
So then how would Christmas start? What would your first Christmas meal be?
It would be made up of what we had from hog butchering, which would have taken place a few days before. And hunting season would be in that time too. So we'd have pork from the pieces that wasn't salted down, such as spare ribs, liver pudding, hog jaw, and I guess that would be the pork, and the game would be rabbit or birds, or the whole combination of birds, feather and fur. And then it would be whatever was decided, a chicken or duck or a turkey. Rarely turkey, but sometimes it would be turkey or maybe wild turkey.
And greens?
And greens, of course. No meal is without greens. The wild watercress grow in cold weather, so every year you sort of marked where it would be most plentiful. And I don't know, ever since I could remember, they were gathering greens, not just for Christmas either. If we had a cold fall, we'd have some wild watercress. It was a kind of green that they thought had many nutritious values. So if someone fell ill, they would go and look the countryside over to get a bag of wild watercress and cook it. So that was part of Christmas meal too.
Oh.
It was special.
It's a very unusual flavor and taste.
Yes, it has. It's spicy, and then when it's cooked down, the spiciness toned down, but it has a rich, mellow flavor.
Well, Edna, let's go in the kitchen and cook that watercress. Now, I thought this watercress would have a bitter flavor. This is the cultivated watercress, which was all we had until you came bringing us this lovely fresh watercress that you picked yourself. We thought that it would have a bitter flavor, but it's wonderful. Yeah. Let me move this over here, and then let's look at these meats so that we can talk about the meats that we would use to flavor this. It's so tasty. This is streak of lean. And about how much streak of lean would you use for this? Just about half?
Well, for this I would use half, and then the half that I would use, I would cut it down to the skin, but not completely in two, so all the flavor comes
Right.
out.
Okay, and then over here, this is country ham, and they made skinny slices, which is just the way it happens when you go to the grocery store. Sometimes that's all you can get. How would you do that?
This I would also cut. This is only if you just can't find some smoked pork or a ham hock or bacon or streak of lean, because for this kind of seasoning, ham isn't really the best.
Right.
So it's better if you buy a whole ham to cut off the hock, because sometimes you don't have a pot really big enough to put the whole ham in.
We're going to put that hock in here.
And this is the ham hock. This has a great flavor because the ham has been cured and smoked, so and it also has fat. It has a really has the best flavor of any of these three.
And this is the bacon. Let's just show them. They put this in the water,
and let it cook for about an hour.
Yeah.
And then over here is some already cooked broth that we have made that's cooked an hour. And just dump this watercress into this is the cultivated watercress, into the pan. And cook it. How long do you cook it? About
40 minutes, I guess.
Kind of have to stuff it in, don't you?
Yes.
And I cook it covered. Do you?
Oh, yes, you can cook it covered. Sometimes I like to cook greens uncovered. It'll keep them from turning brown. But that's if you're just cooking a little small amount.
And then here we have this wonderful, luscious watercress. You could cut it up, I suppose, couldn't you? And
yes, you could if you like.
But I kind of like.
Traditionally, it's cooked without being cut up.
And do you serve the meat with it, or do you just?
No, I think it. All of the strength has been extracted from the meat, so I just put it aside and just serve the greens.
But definitely the pot liquor.
Oh, yeah.
With the cornbread. Well, thank you. It's going to be wonderful.
Tuesday nights on the Learning Channel. They were pirates' hideaways, castaways' prisons. Bounty hunters have plundered there. Empires coveted them. Surrounded by oceans and lost in time, these are the places where unknown riches live. Don't miss a new series that captures the spirit of a swashbuckling era and the people whose legends endure. Treasure Islands, Tuesday nights at 9:30 beginning December 27th on the Learning Channel. A long time ago, in a place far, far away, a baby was born in a remote little town. A baby who would change the course of human history. Now, in celebration of the season, TLC recalls that wondrous moment in time, separating the facts from the myths while looking back on the genesis of a great religion. Join us for a very special evening, our Ancient Journeys Holiday Special, tonight beginning at 6 on the Learning Channel.
We remember our lives in pictures, but the parts in between those pictures, long stretches of life, we too easily forget. Presenting the Nikon Light Touch Zoom, the world's smallest 35mm autofocus zoom. You will take more pictures. You will remember more, and perfectly. Nikon, we take the world's greatest pictures, yours.
Is someone special expecting something special from you? Don't disappoint them. Send it express mail. Overnight delivery starting at just $9.95. Even on Christmas Day. Express mail from your post office.
Just because you have a cold, why suffer with it? Get the 24-hour relief of Epidac 24.
One pill, once a day. Why suffer?
Only Epidac works 24 hours. 24-hour Epidac takes the suffering out of a cold.
Me again. I was telling you about the computer that thinks it's a toy. Pico. It's from Sega. Sega! Its software is called Storyware. Turn the page. It changes right on your TV screen. See? While she's playing Winnie the Pooh, she's learning all about numbers. With Mickey's blast into the past, he's having fun with history. And while he's playing Magic Crayons, he's learning to animate his own cartoon show. Or maybe you'd rather your kid just watch TV.
Take one Christmas Eve, add a little whimsy, stir gently, then toss in a heaping scoop of diamond walnuts. That's what holiday memories are made of.
Now, meet Chef Paul Prudhomme. He's been one of the most dynamic forces in Southern and American cooking and is the author of the Prudhomme Family Cookbook.
And I was the last of 13 children. And we didn't have, when we got a toy for Christmas, it was something carved out of wood, like maybe a wooden train, or we got a whole stalk of bananas. And Dad would hang them in the barn and they would ripen slowly. And that was a holiday thing. We got, stockings on the mantle. We had real mantle. We had a fireplace that we used to heat the house with. And we had stockings and we'd get apples and oranges and get fruit in it. So basically our Christmases was family and meal. I mean, that was a meal. They would have 30 different dishes, and all the family was there. And then as when I became about 8 or 9 years old, Mother started a new tradition, and all the family went to the in-laws for Christmas, and then everybody got together for New Year's. So we had our Christmas and New Year's as a family together, and we used to drink anisette, which is Mother's homemade booze and homemade beer, and I had a ball.
And what would you eat?
We had maybe 40, 50 dishes at New Year's time, and everybody would bring candy yams or their own version of it, a potato salad, or you'd bring enough food for your family, and then they'd lay it out on the table. And we had a tradition which I think still stands in many Cajun families. The men ate first, and there was maybe 30, 40 men, and then the kids ate. And then the women sat down and ate, because then they had nothing else to do. The men were asleep, the kids were asleep, and they could sit and chat and eat. So, we had turkey, and we had 3 or 4 kinds of dressing. We had roast pork. We had 3 or 4 kinds of beans and desserts. I mean, the Cajuns love sweet things. We had all kind of desserts and candies. And
Southern cooking, though, seems to be going on the upswing. I think there are 6 or 7 new books out about Southern cooking right now. What do you think? Why?
Well, the southern part of every country, the food is better. It has more seasoning in it. It has more taste. It has more time put into it. Food is more important in the southern part of any country. And in the United States, we've always had the best food in the South. And the dominating food areas have always been New York, San Francisco, and sort of New Orleans mixed in. But I think now that people realize it's not only New Orleans, it's the entire South and all the Gulf Coast that really has wonderful food that's unique and good. Not in the sense of being knock you down unique like Louisiana food is, but the South has, I've said, Natalie, for years that when people discovered a good biscuit, that it would rival a croissant any day. And it's proven to be true.
Absolutely.
A good biscuit is better than a croissant. I mean, it has its place in culinary arts.
That's right. And then there's a technique to it, too, I think. People used to act like there was no technique to making something that was Southern.
I tell people all the time that if you just took food and you put ingredients and you put it all together in a pot, turn the fire on, that everybody would be the same quality of cook. But what makes things different and what makes them exciting is the way you put them in the pot and what happens after they're in there. And if you're making a biscuit, or if you're making, there's method and there's technique to it that is critically important to the end result. For years I tried to make the outside of my biscuit like my mother's. And one day I sat down and said, why was it hers this way? And she would mix her dry mix and then put her milk in it and then mix it on this end. And when a biscuit got to be a round biscuit, she would put it back in the dry mix and put that on the outside. On this end, she had a long wooden bowl that she made her biscuits in. And after doing that, I realized that was the secret. That what made the outside crust and what made it really different and good.
When you think of Christmas, what dish do you think of most?
Well, truthfully, I think of candy yams. I mean, it's the dish we did, that we're going to do today. But I think of roast pork and candy yams and potato salad and dirty rice and put it all together. And oh, yum. I mean, it's just good.
Paul, I'll butter the potatoes while you make the sauce.
All right, we've got a candy yam sauce, and this is one of the easy things in the world to make. We melted some butter, and then the next step is we're going to add some some white sugar to it, and a little bit of cinnamon. You mustn't mix up the colors there. I mean, you ought to be able to tell the difference between brown and white, or green and yellow. And we're going to put the brown sugar in, and we're turning the fire up. We want to bring it to a boil, and the next step is we're going to add some water to it. Now, at this point, I mean, this is a really tough recipe. All you need to do is just let her cook, and it's going to get a nice dark color to it. And you got to bring it to a boil to tie it together as a syrup. And when we take the potatoes, and after you butter them, we'll put them in the oven, okay?
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I used to take these things and we'd peel them when I got back from school in the afternoon, and Mother'd have some wonderful homemade bread made. And we'd take the homemade bread with little loaves, and you stick your finger in them, and you make a hole, and you pour syrup in there.
That's right.
And then you take the sweet potato and the syrup and the bread. Boy, it's good eating.
We did that with biscuits with sorghum in the center.
Oh, that's good
yeah,
stuff.
that's great. What about these different kinds of, what's a yam and what's a sweet potato?
Well, actually, they're they're almost the same thing. I think this is a yam. I mean, this is the first time I've seen it. It tastes like the yams I've seen in the past. These two, what we call heart of gold sweet potatoes, and these are Puerto Rican. So there are 4 varieties of sweet potatoes there, and they all pretty much taste the same. You can really tell the difference more raw than you can after they're cooked. And I see you're peeling some over there. Once they've baked in the oven, and this recipe calls for that, first you bake them until they fart tender, and then the peeling comes off with it's all wrinkled, like, you know, when you get to be old and gray and all that stuff, when you get wrinkled, and it just comes right off after it gets all wrinkled and you let it cool down a bit. And it's always better to peel sweet potatoes when they're hot. Then after that, you take them and you cut them the way you see Natalie doing there, in nice circles, and you line them up in a dish, and then you take the candy yam sauce, and I've got it up to a boil here, Natalie, and we'll just pour it right over the top of that. And
Paul, I bake those potatoes about an hour at 400 to get them that way.
I think that an hour at 400 would be sufficient. I think that with each stove is going to vary a little bit, but I think probably we could say 45 minutes to an hour. Because remember, the potatoes are already cooked, your sauce is essentially cooked, and what you want to do is marry those things together, just like that.
350 for about half an hour?
Boy, does that smell good.
It's wonderful, isn't it? It's beautiful and bubbly. Whose recipe is this?
Give me a big spoon.
Yep.
This is my brother, J.C., and his wife, Sis's recipe.
Big enough?
And,
no.
Oh, no, we got to... I was serious when I said I wanted a big spoon.
You said to cool this down, though, before you could eat it.
Well, it should cool it down a little bit, but, you know, you can...
It can burn your tongue.
You should taste it. No. You got to learn how to do it. You swallow fast. When you're a real eater, you know, you learn how to taste.
It's great. It's delicious. It's beautiful.
And it makes a wonderful holiday. Oh, good. Yum.
This portion of the Learning Channel is brought to you in part by Nikon.
We remember our lives in pictures. But the parts in between those pictures, long stretches of life, we too easily forget. Introducing the Nikon Nice Touch Zoom, a Nikon 35mm zoom for under $129. You will take more pictures. You will remember more, and perfectly. Nikon, we take the world's greatest pictures, yours.
Just imagine if all the people who want the iced teapot by Mr. Coffee dropped a hint at the same time. Delicious, fresh brewed iced tea, whenever you want it. The iced teapot by Mr. Coffee.
Just because you have a cold, why suffer with it? Get the 24-hour relief of Epidac 24.
1 pill, once a day. Why suffer?
Only Epidac works 24 hours. 24-hour Epidac takes the suffering out of a cold.
Hey, MCI customers. Now MCI advertises 40% savings with Friends and Family 2 Basic, but the average savings on your MCI bill is only 13%. Must be MCI math again. Look at your bill. To get any discount at all, people you call have to be in your circle, and to get the big savings, they also have to be MCI customers. You even have to pay $36 a year in fees, so you never get 40% off your total bill. Now, some true math from AT&T. 20% is what we offer, and 20% is what we subtract off your AT&T bill. That's AT&T True USA Savings. Spend $25 a month on AT&T Long Distance and save 20% on your AT&T calls to everyone in the USA anytime, guaranteed. 4 out of 5 Friends and Family 2 Basic customers will save more with AT&T. Call 1-800-PIC-ATT. Switching's free. Call now.
Your true voice.
Mississippi's Craig Claiborne, food editor of the New York Times, is our final guest. Southern Cooking is the title of his most recent cookbook, and he comes last to share his favorite New Year's party recipes.
We were very, very poor. My father lost everything when I was about 4 years old, and although we were extremely poor, we had lots of servants in the kitchen, and they were the fantastic cooks. Blanche and Helen and Pearl and the whole crew, and they were my friends. The kitchen was my playground. I didn't like sports. I never played football, basketball, baseball, but I played in the kitchen. They let me roll out the biscuit dough and cut the biscuit with the biscuit cutters, and so that was my domain.
So they developed your flavor, your taste, your
Right,
palate,
right.
and they developed your skill, really.
Well, we had a marvelous cook named Pearl. It was a man, but Pearl, I got the idea once. I'd think cream chicken liver would be fantastic. I must have been about 5 or 6 years old. So Pearl fried up some chicken livers, put them in a cream sauce with lots of black pepper. It was sensational.
Oh, doesn't that sound wonderful? And what about holidays then? You said you were poor. What would you eat for holidays? What made holidays special?
Well, we had boarders, 12 boarders, day after day, year after year. But for certain holidays, my mother said, I'm sorry, you've got to find another place to eat for Christmas and New Year's Day.
Well, that's...
and also Thanksgiving. So consequently, the family spent Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Day alone. And so I'll never forget when I was an infant, just out of the cradle. The thing I loved most, my father was a good hunter, and he loved to hunt quail. We used to have a quail for Christmas breakfast, braised, with grits, of course, and country ham, and red-eye gravy, and hot biscuits, and homemade preserves. It was fantastic breakfast.
Oh, does that sound wonderful? And then black-eyed peas, you said?
New Year's Day, we always had black-eyed peas for good luck. Oh. We needed lots of that, too.
And now, of course, we've updated that, and you've done a sizzling new version in your wonderful new book.
Black-eyed peas vinaigrette. I love that. I think that is a totally new invention. I found a recipe about 6 years ago. It's incredibly good.
Let's go in now and see how exactly to make these black-eyed peas.
Vinaigrette. Happy New Year.
Yes, sir. How did you think about this recipe, Craig? It's fascinating.
Well, I'll tell you, I grew up with black-eyed peas all of my life. I lived on soul food in the South. We had black-eyed peas at least once a day for dinner, the midday meal, or in the afternoon for supper. And I loved black-eyed peas, but it never occurred to me that it might be a fairly sophisticated dish. And I went to a place called the Inn in Washington, Virginia, and it was one of the fantastic meals, and he served black-eyed peas vinaigrette. And this is how you make them. Okay?
It's wonderful. All right, let's
all right, you take about a pound of black-eyed peas, and I found that the cooking time of black-eyed peas varies tremendously. The package says to soak them overnight if you want to. I didn't soak them. Don't soak mine. They cook very well without soaking. Okay. But you should pick over to remove any foreign particles, and you take 1 pound and put it into a kettle, just like that.
Right.
And then you take 8 cups of water and add that to it. By the way, these are dried black-eyed peas found on any supermarket shelf, but these are the fresh black-eyed peas that come out of the shell.
They make such a difference, and the cooking time's a little different, of course.
Much shorter, right?
Much shorter.
So to the kettle, you add a little bit of salt if you cook with salt. I don't. But then you add a freshly ground pepper to taste, and you add 1 onion stuck with 2 cloves, like that, a whole onion stuck with 2 cloves, and then you make a cheesecloth bag of about 6 sprigs of parsley, 1 bay leaf, about 1/4 teaspoon or half a teaspoon of dried thyme, and 1 clove of garlic. You wrap that up. Will you tie that to a bundle?
I sure will.
You tie that with string.
This may be the hardest part of the show. You can keep talking while I prep the
cheesecloth. And then you bring your liquid to the boil with the black-eyed peas and the onion stuck with 2 cloves. You might have slow there.
I know. I told you it would be the hardest part.
All right.
You want to hold it while I tie?
Right.
There we go.
You tie 1 clove of garlic, 6 sprigs of parsley, 1 bay leaf, and 1/4 teaspoon of thyme into a bay leaf bag, and you drop that in the water. And you cook that about 1 hour, 1 hour and 15 minutes. The cooking time varies tremendously from one batch of black-eyed peas to the other.
It's never the same, is it?
No.
Never the same.
1 hour, I find, for the most part, is just about right. You must not overcook them, by the way. And after you cook them...
They get mushy, don't they? Is that what happens?
Well, if you overcook them, they become mushy. You should make sure that they stay firm, soft but firm, and like that. So then you take, to make the black-eyed peas vinaigrette, you take about 2 tablespoons of finely chopped shallots, like that. You take about 1/4 cup of finely chopped parsley, like that. You take about 1 teaspoon of finely minced fresh garlic, add that to it. You take about 3 tablespoons of red wine vinegar, you add that. You take about 2/3 of a cup of olive oil, preferably. You could use corn or peanut oil, but you add 2/3 of a cup of olive, corn, or peanut oil to this. What we're doing really is making a French dressing.
That's what it really is.
A vinaigrette sauce, right?
It's a wonderful idea.
And then you take you mix that very well with a fork or a rubber spatula, and you put it into a serving bowl.
You want to dump it on
If you'd like, we add a little bit more salt and pepper to taste. I think it's not essential.
Now, would you serve this New Year's Eve or New Year's
Oh,
Day?
absolutely. In my family, every New Year's Eve we had to have black-eyed peas for good luck. And it's a great New Year's Eve dish.
Did you serve turnip greens too for greenbacks?
No, did you?
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Oh, for greenbacks, I see.
Right.
I see.
In other words, if you only had one, you would only have luck, but you wouldn't have money, and we wanted both.
All right. So if you want to add a little bit more finely chopped parsley at the top of that, you can, just for looks. I'll tell you something else fantastic. If you use finely chopped fresh coriander, it's sensational with this dish.
Oh, and that's so nice. And you know, the whole thing has changed. You can get fresh coriander almost year-round all over the South.
And also shallots. You know, about 15 years ago, you could not find shallots in the north of the South, but now you find them everywhere. I think they're grown in the South too now, aren't they?
Yes, and they're all over. And it's an unusual thing, actually, to combine the shallot with the regular onion.
Oh, I forgot about the onions. We need about half a third of a cup.
Oh, well, let's add the onions.
Okay.
That's why we measured out everything in advance.
All right.
Well, it's
a third of a cup of finely
delicious.
chopped onions. All right.
It's delicious, and Happy New Year's to you.
Beautiful hardback copies of Natalie Dupree's New Southern Cooking, containing over 350 recipes, are available for $25 plus $4.50 shipping and handling. To order your copy, call 1-800-633-9100. Please have your MasterCard or Visa available. You can also order by sending a check for $29.50 to New Southern Cooking, Post Office Box 68618, Indianapolis, Indiana 46268.
The world is now a little different, a little sharper, because J.A. Henkel's, makers of the world's premier knives, has developed a way to improve them. It's called SCT, Sinter Metal Component Technology, and it's exclusively Henkel's. So only Henkel's knives will be even sharper than before and will stay sharper longer. J.A. Henkel's, the world's finest cutlery since 1731. To help start your collection, our $35 4-star 3-inch paring knife is now $19.99.
Again. I was telling you about the computer that thinks it's a toy. Pico. It's from Sega. Sega! Its software is called Storyware. Turn the page. It changes right on your TV screen. See? While she's playing Winnie the Pooh, she's learning all about numbers. With Mickey's blast into the past, he's having fun with history. And while he's playing Magic Crayons, he's learning to animate his own cartoon show. Or maybe you'd rather your kid just watch TV.
It's decision-making time in New Britain, Connecticut.
Wow, look at that socket set.
You see, New Britain's the home of Stanley.
What do you think? The electric stapler or the screwdriver set?
And while it's no easy task,
Glue gun? What glue gun?
making the best possible products all year long,
Oh yeah, moms love these things.
it's even tougher deciding
I just don't know.
which makes the best gift.
Does he have a Stanley garage door opener?
Doesn't everybody?
Look for great Stanley gift ideas at leading retailers.
You know, the thing that I learned after speaking to all of our very famous guests is that, in fact, the most important thing about a holiday meal is not the hours that you spend cooking or the lengthy preparation or the economic situation that you're in. What matters is that you imbue your life with what we call Southern hospitality, which is caring for your guests, wanting to share your food, wanting to nurture those that you love, providing them with foods that are favorites to them, and also something that's fun for them, bringing them into your home and your hearts. All of those things are what's important in the Southern tradition, no matter who you are or where you came from. And I hope that that's something that you can take with you when you're fixing turkey or watercress or just your favorite family meal.
Garlic toast, orange and lemon salad, red pepper pasta, and roasted chicken stuffed with vegetables. They're all on the menu as Carlo Cooks Italian. That's next from TLC's Holiday Kitchen. Fees for the Learning Channel are paid in part by your local cable operator.
With the iced tea pot by Mr. Coffee, you can make...
Knows lead us back to the dinosaurs. Find out on Paleo World. Tonight at 8 on TLC.
Now on TLC, he was born poor. He died young. But he changed the world forever. Who was Jesus? A prophet? A rebel? Or something much bigger? Join us as we retrace his steps, revisit his message. Return to the Holy Land as we present the life and times of Jesus, tonight at 9 on TLC.
Every 13 seconds, a child is abused or neglected. Every 30 minutes, more than 1,000 students are attacked on school grounds. In 1 hour, children watch as many as 25 violent acts on TV. Every 2 hours, a child dies of a gunshot wound. Our children are exposed to an overwhelming amount of crime and violence. We as parents have the power and the responsibility to safeguard our children. Get involved. Join your PTA.
Hello, I'm Natalie Dupree. Next on New Southern Cooking's Holiday Special, we have some fabulous treats for you made by some very special Southerners. Lee Bailey has made a wonderful turkey stuffed with cornbread dressing. We have gravy and biscuits, Paul Prudhomme's candied yams, scalloped oysters made by Ann Siddon's perfect